is I want you concentrating on mixing color and trying to get the color, the value, the intensity, and the temperature correct. Okay? So that's what we're doing. Now, I've got a little demo up here, and as you can see, I took basically a violet, mixed a little yellow with it, made it gray, put a quick wash down on the canvas, right? And from there, I threw a little red into that mixture and just made something so that I could see it, and started, kind of outlining my basic shapes. I didn't add any detail or anything. And then I took that very same color mixture that I used and I blocked in where most of my shadows are. Okay? So you always start basically from your dark values, working toward which direction? Light. Okay? Dark to light. That's painting, right? Yes, it is. Okay? Because if you're doing it the other way, then you're doing watercolor.
Okay.
See, because watercolor works that direction, right? Drawing works that direction. See, you're starting off with lighter tones and building up to dark in drawing. You're starting off with lighter colors and tones and building up to dark in watercolor. But in painting, you're always starting with your darks first, because that will anchor and establish your composition, and then you're building from the dark into the mid-tone and then into the light. Okay? So that's the process of painting. Alright? And you're painting if you use acrylics, oils, gouache, pastels, casing, almost any other painting medium is from dark toward light. Okay? Now, when I say that I want you to block in simple colors and shapes, I mean that. So, like for example, I've got this figure sitting there, and I want to start blocking in some of the colors and shapes on her, and she's hiding back here behind the music. There we go. So I'm going to go with my darker values first. And the darkest value I see on there is fairly close to black. Now, we don't have black here, right? And remember last week I had you make black? How much fun was that? It wasn't. And why wasn't it? It was hard to achieve. And why was it hard to achieve?
Because we didn't have black.
Yeah, okay. I mean, what made it so difficult?
Trying to get the combination of colors.
Yeah. And it's really not that you have to use that many colors. There's several different combinations up here you could use to create black. It's more of getting the right balance between those 2 or 3 colors, right? Because if one is a more dominant color, then you're going to need less of it than something that's, weaker, right? So like for example, yellow is not very strong, right? So you're probably going to need more of it than you will blue or violet or anything else. Now I just took the green and the violet and put them together, and I've got something that looks pretty inky here already, okay? But it's still a little bit on the blue side. Now what I'm going to do to test it is I'm just going to take a little bit of white and put in there. And actually it's not too bad.
What colors did you use and what you had there?
The green and the violet.
The green and the violet.
Okay, let me hold this up. Okay? And you see, I got a pretty good gray. It's not particularly blue, it's not particularly green, right? It's somewhere right in the middle, so that means that I got the balance of those 2 colors right. Okay? So, now that I know it's pretty close to black. Then I'm going to go ahead and just knock it in. Simple shape. And again, I'm not trying to worry about any of the details involved there. I'm just putting down a dark. All right. In the reference that I've got, pretty much so, there's a very strong dark all the way up the side of her body. That kind of connects. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Kind of like so. Okay. Maybe a little behind where the foot's going to be as well. Okay. So just a big patch of dark. I've got another dark object over here to the left. And it comes down and it sort of almost connects with the knee. Okay. So I'm not trying to be particularly accurate or neat with it right now. I'm just trying to get value and color down and make sure that I have the darks dark enough, because if you don't get the darks dark enough, then that's going to throw your color scale out, because you're going to be judging it against something that's weaker than where you need to be. So then I'm going to move to the next, what I feel the next darkest value is, which would really be kind of about the skin tones. And I've already got those placed. So I can move on from there. And I've got that shirt that's in shadow. And when you've got something that's got a pattern and it's like really busy and it's got a lot of color in it, point your eye down, okay, and look at it. And try to discern what color is dominant in there, okay? Even though you've got all these different colors going on, just try to figure out what the dominant color is, and then go ahead and place that. And in this case, when I spent down, it's kind of this bluish green. It's not a real strong dark. It's probably about a number 7 on the value scale. So I'm going to take a green, and it tends to be kind of bluish green anyway, but I'm going to add a little more blue to it. And then just a touch of white. Because again, this is getting very close to a really strong dark, and we don't need it that far. Let's see, maybe a little more blue.
Charles, would you repeat what you said about the color getting it right
The color what?
to agree with the other colors?
Well,
I think she's talking about where it's not.
yeah, what I was saying is take your time, all right, in mixing that first dark, and make sure to get that dark enough, all right, because you're going to basically scale everything else to that. So if you don't have it strong enough, then that's going to throw off, you know, your contrast on the rest of the colors that you mix. Right? Now, if you made an error in that, okay, I would rather you err to be too dark than too light. So if you got to make a mistake, you know, then make it to the side where it's darker. And the reason being that if you do that, oh boy,
I knocked over my ruler.
yeah. What do you need?
Something to.
Just mop it up?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, one of those towels down there would be fine. Okay. Anyway, So, if you're going to, be off, try to be off as far as making it too dark and rather than too light. And again, the reason for that is that most of the time, people have a harder time seeing subtleties in color on the darker ranges than they do in the midtones and in the lights. So, erring on the dark, you're going to end up with more contrast in the painting, and it's a lot easier to adjust contrast to be closer, right, at the end than it is to try to separate it and push it further apart. Okay, a lot less work. All right, so I've just laid in that blue-green, and again, it's just a big patch of color. I'm going to use a little more of that on the shirt, just on the other side, right below the breast line, because it tends to fall into shadow as well. Okay.
You didn't add any water to that, but then that's just straight.
Yeah, that's just paint.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing. Other than, other than when you're putting the tone on the canvas, try to add very little water to the paint. Try to use the paint almost straight, right? After you get the tone. Okay? While you're putting the tone down, it can be watery, doesn't matter. But when you start actually blocking in this color, try to just use the paint itself. Okay, what was your question, sir?
How about doing priming?
During what?
Priming when you start
Priming.
Whoa, toning.
toning? Okay.
Yeah, that's what I said. You can use water while you're toning the canvas. Okay? But when you're laying these blocks in, just try to use pretty much a straight paint. All right, so let's see. All right, so moving on. I'm
You
pretty
can
much.
use white to do your toning, right?
Pardon?
White?
Yeah, you can.
Add?
You can. You can put white in that mixture if you want.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead. I've got a little more shadow over here on this blue cloth. And I'm going to go ahead and get a value down for that. Okay.
Anything else?
I got to make more black. I forgot something for waistline. Bad man. Okay, that'll work. Okay. So you see how this is beginning to kind of fit together? I've got the shadows now. And those are in place. So now I'm going to move into the midtones. Now, midtones. You're not going to find midtones on the shadow side of the figure. Midtones and light are always on the light side of the figure. Okay. So if you're at a number 5 value, then you're not in a shadow. Okay. You're in a light of some sort. It could even be a reflected light, right? But it's going to be some sort of light. Okay. So from here on out, basically we're dealing with colors that can be either translucent or opaque. The lighter the color gets, the more opaque the color gets. Right?
In all colors?
Pretty much so. Because to make them light enough, you're going to add white. And white makes everything opaque. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with, say, this top that she's got on. And again, it's kind of a turquoise color. Now with the colors that we actually have out here, we can't make that color. How about that? Unfortunately. It's just a limitation of the pigments that we have to work with. To get that, we would need something along the line of like a viridian green. And that would probably match it almost exactly if you just added white to it. But in this particular case, we don't have that.
Charles, what is the turquoise color that you mentioned? Was it Rembrandt turquoise? It was so natural, but they don't make an acrylic version.
You can actually get a pretty good turquoise in acrylic, and you can usually get that. Binders and Blick both have a pretty good mixture of that in acrylic. So you can also get it in golden, just more expensive.
Is Binders, the closest Binders in Alpharetta?
Well, it's not Alpharetta. It's actually on Highway 92 between Roswell and Woodstock, and that's the closest store to us. Now, frankly, as the crow flies, Dick Blick is closer. But it's in Buckhead on Piedmont at the Disco Kroger Shopping Center.
Just an exit down, exit down.
Yeah, if you get off the Buckhead exit and get over
Lennox
to...
Road.
Huh?
Lennox Road.
Yeah, you'll come off at Lennox Road, you'll go over to Piedmont and head south by about a block and turn into that shopping center where the Kroger
That
is.
was Binders.
No, that's Binders.
You were saying Dick Blick.
Blick is.
No, Blick is on 92.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Binders is closer.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying.
It's next to the Kroger.
Yes,
I've been there many, many years.
it is. It is next to the Disco Kroger.
You can't get rid of that now.
Aaron's has golden.
Do they have turquoise? I don't know.
Yeah, they do. Interesting thing about Aaron's, okay? Went in there this weekend. They were having a sale on. Bought a couple of canvases, but I was going to buy paint. The very same soft mixing white that we use here in the oils. They wanted $19.25 a tube. You can go down to Finders and pay $11.45.
What's the discount?
30%.
Yeah, same
Still a
tube.
little more.
Yeah, same tube of paint.
It's also rough
I'm just saying, I mean,
too. Beats going down forever.
yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything against Aaron.
You know,
It's
50%
just,
coupon.
that-
50% coupon.
yeah, you wanna
It's half off always.
use your coupons, whatever you can
And
do.
sales. You
Yeah.
can use,
Yeah, whatever you can do,
yeah.
you wanna do it.
You don't ever need to pay
Yeah,
full retail
price.
there.
no,
You just time yourself.
no, because their retail is
It's higher.
high. But, all right, so again, working mid-tone, right? And I made up a general color for the flesh, and I used cat orange, a little bit of red, and some white. Okay, I haven't graded down or modified it, and I'm just going to go ahead and block it in. It's a pretty strong kind of red orange color. I can make more of it.
For the acrylic turquoise, you said somebody or golden.
Well, both Blick, Binders, and Golden all have a pretty good turquoise. The Binders or Blick would be the more economical version of that. Okay, I'm gonna have to basically shut up and paint faster. Because I want to leave you guys some time to work today. So. But just keep in mind, I'm working in the midtones.
So we're supposed to paint now?
No,
No,
that's why I'm trying to get this done.
I see.
You know, I want to get to the light side at least. Okay, so I'm gonna get a color for that other side of the shirt that's in the light. And I kind of see it as a yellow-green, even though it's got kind of pink and turquoise, yellow, yeah, quite a mixture of color actually. But again, it's just holding the place for some of the other colors that you're going to be weighing in. A little bit right up in here. And now, the idea here is that she's holding an amaryllis, and we didn't have her hold it the day that we painted her because it was blocking, you know, a good portion of her for a lot of people. So we set it to the side so we'd have the same light on it. I'm just going to go ahead and block in a value for it. And on the light side, it's pretty light. Just a little tiny touch of yellow. Now, when you're getting over to the lights, I've seen most of you just pick up straight white and start, you know, plopping it down there on the canvas. That's not a really great idea because white is, first of all, temperature-wise, very cold in temperature, and the other part is that there's nothing that you're going to paint. You're good. That's ever going to be white other than a light source. Okay? If it's not a light source, if it's not emanating light, it's not straight white. And I've seen a lot of you take pretty much a straight white and throw in there for like people's teeth and you know, their eyes and things like that. It's just, you know, unless they're a light bulb, that's not going to work. So don't do that, okay? You know, it's always going to have some color in it. It's never going to be just straight white. And even the lightest light is going to have just a touch of color in it. So don't ever use straight white on your painting unless, as I said, it is a light source. If you've got a lamp or something like that, like a street lamp or something like that, it can be, you know, it could be white. If you see the sun and you're painting that in your painting, unlikely, but okay, you could. then again, you know, you can go to pretty much so straight white. But short of that, don't do that. Stay away from the white. And always have, you know, everything is always a color and or a value. Okay. Now what do you do if you can't determine a color? Anybody have any ideas?
What was your question again, sir?
Does anybody have an idea of what you would do? Say that you're painting something and you can't identify what the hue is.
Go to your color wheel.
Well, you could do that, but even if you did that, you can't really still identify it.
Isolate it?
Yeah, you could use a color isolator to see what the color influence is, but let's say even at that, you couldn't really determine what it was.
Pick a value, something in the same value.
Right, okay. If you can't identify the color, more than likely it's going to be a gray. Okay? Make it a gray. You know, make it a gray and make it the correct value of the gray that you see. Right? Because sometimes, you know, you'll sit there and you'll look at something and, you know, it's like, well, I'm not really sure. You know, I can't really see exactly what color that is. Okay?
Now, why do you say to go to gray?
Well, why go to gray? Well, because if you can't identify it, then it's probably really pretty neutral, more than likely. And, you know, and grays are neutral, right? And if you get the value right, will the color really make any difference? No, probably not. Because what's the one thing I keep saying about each and every one of you? Color is what? Anybody remember? Said it last week at least 3 or 4 times.
It's a value.
No. Color is
A ton.
no.
What's
No,
this?
it's irrelevant.
Oh.
Uh-huh. See? The fact is, you don't have to sit up here and copy every color that you see. In fact, you can make up your own colors. What you have to concern yourself more about is you have to concern yourself about the value, structure, and you have to maintain that. And it would be a good idea to maintain the temperature structure. Okay? So if you get the value and the temperature right, it doesn't matter what color you make. They could be literally anything. You know, I could paint her chartreuse or purple. It wouldn't matter as long as I got the range of value correct. Okay. So is that beginning to look like somebody sitting there? Mm-hmm. Okay. And you see, there's no detail in there. It's just simple shapes. You kind of get the idea that she's holding something. You know, this large, whitish, or very light flower in this case. I'm going to put in a little bit of mid-tone. Soften that a little bit. Now I know that looks lighter, but it will dry darker. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? You gotta go back and get a dark for the other side of the stem. Okay, so I've got my color blocks in. Now as far as, you know, the background, I haven't done anything to it, have I? Anybody have any clue as to why? Any ideas? Come on.
Because then that's how you can start getting the shape. You get her correct, and then you can fine tune it by using the background.
Right, yeah. What I can do is, by painting the background in last rather than first, I have the opportunity to come back in and refine my shapes and my edges along the outside shape of the figure, in this case. And it doesn't really matter whether you're painting an apple or a flower or a figure, a house. Same thing applies. You know, by holding off and doing the background later rather than at first, it's going to give you the opportunity to come back in and actually define, you know, some of those edges and shapes. And that's kind of where, if there is any drawing taking place, you know, in the process of painting, that's kind of where it takes place at, is really more toward the end rather than at the beginning. Yeah. Most people want to start off drawing first, but the problem with doing that is that, like any time that you place a line anywhere, it's sort of a finite decision. And if you're true to human nature, most people don't like changing their decisions, right? And you're going to make it work one way or the other. So rather than fight with it and try to fit it into that mold by drawing first, hold off on creating your edges and lines until really the end. And I think you'll be generally happier. You'll find it to be a much easier process than if you, you know, outlined everything. So I'm mixing up a color and a value here for my background. We're getting there. A little bit of that. Now the background isn't really light. It's really kind of right around about a mid-tone. It's generally warm in temperature. If I had to identify the color family, I would either have to say it's a yellow-green or a yellow. But it's kind of in that ballpark.
Do you have to make it like the picture?
No, you don't have to. But if you're going to change it, you don't necessarily want to come back in and change it so radically. Like you wouldn't want to put like a black background back there, okay? Because that's going to totally throw off the values. And it's going to be saying something different than what's going on there. And it's going to look a little funny. Because those lights and shadows are falling, you know, that particular way in that environment, you know, because of the light. And so trying to stay close to that would be a good idea. All right. So you see, by just using that background color, laying it in, I can get rid of, you know, any kind of erroneous lines that I had laid in before. And now I'm beginning to get the actual contrast that, you know, I'm seeing in the reference that I'm painting from. Now, as it moves across from right to left, it tends to get a little bit darker and a little bit more neutral. So as I move across, I'm going to change the actual mixture of paint a little bit. And again, I'm doing this very quickly because all I'm trying to do right now is I'm just trying to get all of those surfaces blocked in. So I have some kind of color and value representing what it is that I'm seeing.
You're doing the Naomi.
I'm doing what?
You're doing the Naomi.
I'm doing the Naomi?
Yeah, you know, she does that quickly back and forth with her brush.
Okay.
Are you allowed to do like thin paint and then make the back come through with iridescent, or you really-
Sure, yeah, you could, yeah. You can apply the paint really any way you want. You can build it up in like thin dry brush layers. You can use it wet. Again, you know, I'd encourage you not to add water to it, right? You know, you can lay it on with a palette knife. Really, any process you want to go through to actually apply the paint is fine. Okay. So pretty much so. That's the first stage, okay? And where I'd like you to get today and no further is about there, okay? Where you have just, big masses and shapes put in, all right?